We are talking this morning about the jazz of transitions and the art of improvisation. But first, let's talk about what improvisation isn't. When I was 21 years old, I was in the middle of my college career and I received an email from my church back home inviting me to come to be one of the keynote speakers at a large conference that they were hosting back home. And they invited me, not as the big speaker. They had a big speaker there. I was just kind of the guy to kick things off and to introduce the speaker. And in the email, the one who invited me said, "You'll have 30 minutes to talk on something on something with the theme of grace and freedom." And so I thought, easy. This will be easy. I was a biblical studies major. And here's what you should know about that time in my life. Right around the age of 21, in the middle of my college career, I was going through a major faith transition. I was growing out of something old and growing into something new. I was asking a different set of questions. My mind and heart were being flooded with new ideas and perspectives, and these things were changing me. They were transforming me, transforming the ways in which I was seeing the world. So I thought, easy. I don't need to prepare for this. I'll just go in and do my thing and drop in some information. So let me tell you about how that experience went. I walked up on stage holding my Bible, and remember, I was given 30 minutes. I spoke for a grand total of 6.5 minutes. Not good. During those 6.5 minutes, I stumbled over my words and I fumbled over my ideas. And then get this, I ended my talk with the best line ever. And by best line ever, I mean like the complete opposite of a mic drop. I closed my Bible and I said, well, that's about all I have on that issue. And I walked back down to my seat. And when I did, when I was up there even, I knew I had completely bombed this thing. I had completely bombed it. And if you're thinking to yourself, oh, maybe Ryan's just being too hard on himself, surely it wasn't that bad. It was really bad. There was nothing good about it. One of my biggest supporters and encouragers, he came up to me as I was sitting there, and I'll never forget what he said and what he did. He put his hand on my shoulder, and he said, "Bro, that wasn't your best." Ouch, ouch. And I learned that important lesson. You can't go in and drop information on people without giving a piece of your heart, because it's not inspiring. It's not compelling. And I vowed on that day to never do a public speaking engagement without being prepared. So when we're talking about good improvisation, we're talking about the thing that you love and having that thing flow out of you. So think about musicians, jazz musicians, what you just saw up here, what Ed did with the saxophone. The thing that you love, the thing that you prepared and cultivated, that thing flowing out of you, composing in the moment. Not just jumping in randomly, but composing something and creating something beautiful in that moment because you love it and you've cultivated that thing. So there's this great line in the book of James from the New Testament. With humility, welcome the word planted deep inside you, the very word that is able to save you. So, my brothers and sisters, what is that word for you? What's the word, the good news that's been planted deep inside you? And for this St. Luke's community, what's the word planted deep inside this community that's waiting to burst forth into new life? What is it? Now, in the ancient world, so many of the spiritual metaphors were agricultural metaphors. Why? Because the people lived in such an agricultural setting. So all the time, when you're reading through the scriptures, you see pictures and images of seeds and planting and harvesting and seasons and rest in between each of these seasons. And here's the thing about seeds. If the seed has just been planted, it is totally okay to say, I'm not ready yet. I'm not ready yet. So if I could go back to that experience when I was 21 years old, which I get it, you can never go back, learn and grow from everything. But if I could go back, it would be entirely appropriate for me to respond to that email and say, thank you so much for this invitation. It is a complete honor. However, I'm going through some major transitions in my life, and I'm going to have to pass on this one. But it is the thing I love, so please keep me in mind for the future. It's okay not to be ready. I was talking with a friend last week who runs a nonprofit organization, and he's doing some really cool things. And he was telling me that recently a news reporter called him, wanting to do a story on him and the organization. And I said, well, what'd you say? He said, well, I just told her we weren't ready yet. Told her we weren't ready. The ideas are too new, they're too fresh. We don't have the infrastructure in place, we're not ready yet. It's okay not to be ready. In fact, when you read through Mark's gospel, you have this thing what most scholars refer to as the Messianic Secret. And what that is Jesus all the time is doing these incredible, profound things. He's going into communities and people groups and individuals that no one will go to, and people consider them dirty and unclean, and you're not supposed to be around these people. And Jesus would go to them and sit with them and even touch them and bring healing and restoration into their lives, restore them back into the community. And all the time, the response from the people was, oh my goodness, this is good news. I've got to go share this good news. And you know how people get all sorts of excited when they have this newfound faith? And sometimes they can do the most harm when it's newfound? Jesus would always say, shh, don't tell anyone. Leave here in silence. And you're reading this and you're like, Jesus, what's up with that? I thought it was about evangelism. I thought it was about spreading this good news of healing and restoration. And as you read on, you get the sense that Jesus is saying, shh, not yet. Because you don't yet realize this thing that you're holding. You don't yet realize the significance of this gift you've been given. The time will come, but it's not yet. Now here's the thing. The secret, the silence, the not being ready, it doesn't last forever, does it? There's a time to speak. There's a time to act. And good improvisation is not about saying, oh, shucks. Not being prepared, let's just see what happens here. That's lazy. That's dumb. We don't do that. Good improvisation is never marked by an overwhelming fear and shame. So it's not about saying, oh, who, me? No, I could never do that thing. Who am I to go to them? Who am I to relate to them? What do I have to say with them? Who am I to work with them? Oh, and what if this thing goes wrong and this thing goes wrong, and what's going to happen? It's marked by something different. So in 2 weeks, I get another chance to go to Kenya, Africa, with a team of people from around the country, some of whom are right here at St. Luke's. And we'll be traveling to Africa with Project Humanity. Project Humanity is involved in issues of women's empowerment, prenatal care, education, microloans, microfinancing for women who are starting small businesses. And one of the things we've been working really hard on for the last year is developing this program, this curriculum, to help people know their story and then share their story. So in 2 weeks, we'll go to Kenya and launch this thing. And on the last day while we're in Africa, we'll be holding this women's conference, second annual women's conference, with about 600 to 700 women. And I get to be one of the speakers. And we go in a bit differently. We're not going in saying, oh my goodness, what if this thing goes wrong and this thing goes wrong and what's going to happen? But we're going in saying, what's going to happen? There's a difference, right? We've worked hard on cultivating the seed that's been growing. what's going to happen here? And do you see the difference versus what's going to happen versus what's going to happen? They're both a bit unpredictable, right? Both a bit unpredictable. But one is marked by fear and this need to control and this lack of trust. And the other is marked by trust, hard work and cultivating the seed. The other is marked by that question, will we be brave enough to jump into the places where God's Spirit is moving? Will we trust in that? With humility, welcome the word planted deep inside you, the very word that is able to save you. Now, here's the other thing about seeds and planting and harvesting and growing. The process of growth, the developmental process, is much more beautiful, way more beautiful, when we can all just admit that we're all just winging it, and some do it a bit more confidently, right? We're all just winging it. It's what makes the process of improvisation so beautiful. Sure, you've learned some things along the way. So have I. That's life. That's growth. That's good. Let's celebrate it. But no one among us has it all figured out, right? It's like Sam was saying. With kid number one, parents, you can identify with this. Kid number one comes along, and you think you've got the thing nailed and figured out because you've learned them, you've learned their personality, you've learned what makes them tick, you know how to love them, you know how to nurture them. And then kid two comes along, and you quickly realize that you don't have a clue what you're doing. Because you look at this little girl, and you say, oh my goodness, you, my dear, are nothing like your sister. Nothing that worked on her works on you, so I have to completely relearn it. But let's just be honest. Some of the most important things in life, the things that matter most, they just take some time and cultivation, don't they? We have to grow that thing. We have to give it time, be patient, be gracious. But see, the problem is we live in this culture that tells us the exact opposite. In 30 days, you can have that perfect body. Come to my seminar, and in 60 days, you'll be making this much money. And 4 simple spiritual laws, if you believe these things, you can quickly be in this beautiful relationship with God. All you have to do is pray this sinner's prayer. When ideas start with all you have to do is, they're usually bad ideas. Because growth takes work, doesn't it? For something to grow, a seed has to be planted. The seed goes down into the earth, and you don't see anything for a while, but the hope is at some point you see something start to sprout, something start to burst forth. What is the word? Planted deep inside you, the very word that will save you. Welcome it with humility. James says, get rid of the things that keep you from welcoming this word. James says, look into the mirror. Look into the mirror. Do you know who you are? Do you know who you are? Do you remember the gift you've been given? And I get it for the mirror. For some of us, this is a great enemy, isn't it? Because when you look into the mirror, you see someone who's too skinny, or you see someone who's too fat. Here I am, a 34-year-old male, and I still have body image issues, and I wonder some days if they'll ever go away. Or you look into the mirror and you see someone too young or too old. And my friends, be reminded, when it comes to finding the thing planted deep inside you, it is never, ever about age. Because you know, right here in this community, there are people in their 70s, 80s, 90s plus who, when you talk to them, you get the sense that they are just getting started. Right? You know these people? And don't ever tell yourselves, oh, I'm too young. When I get done with high school, then I'll find that thing. Then I'll start cultivating that thing. When I get done with college, then I'll start. Start doing the hard work now. Find that thing, cultivate it, grow it, do the hard work now. Sure, it may change along the way. But be reminded, the disciples of Jesus were most likely teenagers. They were the ones actively involved in changing the world. And there's a word for us in that, isn't there? What's the word planted deep inside you? Do you remember who you are? Do you remember the gift you've been given? Here's how James puts it. Know this, my dear brothers and sisters. Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to grow angry. This is because an angry person doesn't produce God's righteousness. Therefore, with humility, set aside all moral filth and growth of wickedness. What are those things? All the things that keep you from welcoming the word. And welcome the word planted deep inside you, the very word that is able to save you. You must be doers of the word and not only hearers who mislead themselves. Those who hear but don't do the word are like those who look at their faces in a mirror. They look at themselves, walk away, and immediately forget what they were like. But there are those who study the perfect law, the law of freedom, and continue to do it. They don't listen and then forget, but they put into practice in their lives. They will be blessed in whatever they do. Do you know who you are? Do you remember the gift you've been given? Because the truth is, when it comes to this thing called life, we get to do this. We get to do it. Have you ever realized that? Because sometimes it just comes over you. And it overwhelms you, it overcomes you. I've had that feeling, that sense, only a couple of times being here at St. Luke's. But when you get it, you get it. The first time was about 3 years ago on Ash Wednesday. And I can remember standing here and looking out to you all and thinking, oh my goodness, I get to do this. With these people, I get to journey through the faith. I get to do this. Another time it happened was just 2 Sundays ago. We were on the plane ride back from our mission trip to Guatemala. And I was sitting in between. On my left was John Church. On my right was Lance Willoughby. And I was writing in the Guatemalan Journal. I had procrastinated all week. We were supposed to each write in it. I had it at one point, but I woke up the next morning and passed it to someone else. And so it came back to me on the plane ride back. And as I started to write, I was overcome with a sense of, oh my goodness, I get to do this. I get to do this with these people, and we get to go out into the world and hopefully create something beautiful. We get to do this. And my goodness, if it didn't happen again just last Sunday as I was standing in the back as the service was beginning. I get to do this. We get to do this. So on our last day in Guatemala, we had just finished with our morning reflections. And we were getting ready to load the bus. But I needed to run back up to the room to grab my bottle of water. Jim Yule was my roommate. He was also the official designated key holder for the week. And I told Jim, I said, man, I got to run back up to the room. I need the key. He was wearing his backpack. He said, it's in my backpack, grab it. And so I unzip his backpack, and I'm reaching in to grab this key. And as I do, I must have crumpled his sign just a bit. He said, easy, you're crumpling my sign. He had a folded white piece of paper in his backpack. And as I pull out the key, this piece of paper comes with it, and I open it. And it had these 2 simple words on it, what if? Question mark. And I said, man, what are you going to do with this? He said, well, at the end of the day, I'm going to get a picture of me standing in front of the house we've been building, and then I'm going to send it to the storyline group. Jim was in my very first storyline group from 2 years ago, and he reminded me 2 years ago on this week, we had the whiteboard out in the living room, and we were working through our what ifs. What if I did this? What if you did this? What if we created something great? It's just where we dream big together and we get it on the whiteboard. And one of his what ifs was, what if I use my handyman talents, skills, and gifts he loves to build? What if I use these gifts to go on one of those Guatemala work trips and give back? And then he said, and look, now I'm here. Here's a picture of Jim standing in front of the house holding his what if sign. And now I'm here. What is the word? Planted deep inside you. Deep inside this community, the thing waiting to burst forth into new life. Because now you're here. We are here. All the dust and bones that we are, we're here. And we've been given this extraordinary gift of this thing called life. You get to do this. We get to do this. We get to jump in and improvise and create and play our part. We get to do this. What are you going to do with it? What are we going to do with it? Amen.